Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. I've set out to uncover amazing and insightful stories by interviewing people from all different backgrounds and perspectives. But unlike other interview shows, only this show aims to also teach you what it means to listen more than you speak, so that you can become a more thoughtful and informed person. Now, I'm a former journalist, and I believe everyone has a story to tell. But we only discover those stories when we ask questions and listen. The more questions you're asking, the more you're listening. And the more you're listening, the more you realize we're not so different after all. My goal is to get beneath the cliche answers to reveal the real nuggets of experiences, desires, dreams, and thoughts that make every person who they truly are. This week on the show, I'm back for another short solo episode where I'm going to give my thoughts on the topic of waiting and why it is so important, especially as we go through a transition here in the United States at the federal level. Waiting to respond and waiting to react when you feel the tug of anger and bitterness pulling at you is the topic that I want to dive in today. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you do, please go subscribe, share the episode with someone you know who might find value in what I'm about to say and what I'm about to go through. And I appreciate you tuning in and listening. I had intended to post this episode last week as the first episode of 2021, but I waited because I didn't feel like my thoughts were well formed enough. And isn't that appropriate for what I'm about to talk about? You'll hear that here in just a moment. But there is so much value in waiting to respond and waiting to speak. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, at the intersection of West 47th Avenue and Mission Road in Kansas City, Kansas, there stands a gas station. And on the outside, it looks like any other gas station you might find at any other intersection in any other city in America. And yet every day except Sundays when they're closed, at around 11 a.m., you'll find a line of people wrapped through the gas station's lobby, winding out the side door and around the south and east side of the building. And you better be in that line when the doors open at 11, or there's a good chance you are out of luck. Now, several times in my life, I've stood in that line for 2 or more hours waiting. And every single time I've done it and made it through the line, the first words out of my mouth have been, "This was so worth the wait." So what? What is worth the wait, you may be asking? Well, I'm going to get that to a bit. I'm going to keep you waiting. But before I do, I have a question for you. How often do you force yourself to wait? Perhaps it's waiting in line for concert tickets for that once-in-a-lifetime chance to see your favorite performer, or to have the newest iPhone before everyone else, so you wait in that line, or to grab the newest Xbox, or is it PS5? I don't know. What about if it's not some material desire, or say, a craving for your favorite food? And that's a pretty big hint, by the way. When was the last time you forced yourself to wait to speak, to voice your opinion, to interject? When was the last time you took a pause to see how a situation played out before reacting? To wait to see the results before you made a decision? To gather more facts before you pass judgment? You see, we live in a get-it-now world, and for a great many of us, myself included, we often don't have to wait to get what we desire. Have a random passing thought or opinion? Twitter and Facebook are at your fingertips, drawing you in and waiting to broadcast your missives to the masses. Want a new thing? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Amazon can have it on your doorstep within hours. Don't have the money? Well, put it on a credit card and get it now. Forget about saving. That's for suckers, right? Listen, I do not bemoan technology and the advancements that have come from it, except for this. It has created an entitlement in us, a belief that we are owed whatever it is we want simply because we want it, or that it is 24/7 available to us, standing by to placate our whims, including the ability to immediately have our innermost thoughts, our immediate thoughts, broadcast for the world to receive whether anyone wants them or not. My friend, there is value in waiting. We benefit from pressing pause when we are mad and want to post a snarky, cutting comment, or when we want to buy that new thing we don't have the money for, or when we are frustrated that things aren't happening at the pace that we want. Our character grows in the waiting, yet we so rarely take moments to pause and withdraw and explore what it is we actually desire and how we're actually feeling. Much has been written about how often we fill voids in our lives with material or physical things that never actually solve the true, real, raw emotions boiling beneath the surface of our insecurities. Instead, we demand immediacy, and if we don't get it, we throw a tantrum like a child. We too often think that shouting and waving our arms in the air and being ever more demonstrative means that our stance must be right if we are so passionate about it, when in reality, it's just the opposite. It reeks of immaturity. Someone who spews forth their opinion without first being mindful of what it is they actually believe and care about, they are like petulant, immature children demanding cake before dinner. I submit that most of the problems we see playing out before our eyes as we doom scroll through social media or seethe in front of cable TV news talking heads, they find their birth in rampant immaturity. It takes a mature person to care about the opinions they put into the world. It takes a mature person to stop themselves short of voicing their sentiments without first considering opposing viewpoints and arguments and weighing their merit beyond emotional first impressions. It takes a mature person to question their own beliefs and ask, are they rooted in truth and honesty, or do their foundations lie in unrestrained and unmanaged feelings, pain, hurt, fear, frustration, jealousy, embarrassment, and so on? The immature among us broadcast their first blush reactions for all to see and proudly proclaim, "That's my opinion, deal with it. If you don't like it, you can leave." And the most recent, "F your feelings." You can figure out what F stands for. Now, empathy is a word tossed and bandied about far too often these days by immature people who actually refuse to employ it. They want the benefits of empathy for their situation and their thoughts and feelings without also submitting to the context it provides when practiced. A mature person doesn't need to be told to be empathetic. They simply are. I recently read a book that profiled former United States President Teddy Roosevelt and how he led in times of crisis. He was a phenomenal leader and one of the most storied characters in U.S. history. But long before he spoke those poignant words, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," meaning he was advising us to measure our words with careful consideration and let our actions yield the results of our character, Roosevelt was an immature, brash, ignorant, and quick to spout off youngster. He was egotistical, emotional, and at times irrational, and as a young, cocky politician, he was ostracized, avoided, and seen as uncooperative with others with which he disagreed. It took being exposed to the plight and downtrodden experiences of others and to trauma in his own life to truly view the world beyond his own wants, desires, and arrogance. And I urge you to grow up and force yourself to wait more often. It took many years for Roosevelt to grow up and mature. We're at a time when hot takes and vehement disagreements are the lightning strikes in an unending and ever-escalating torrential monsoon of emotion playing out second by second on our screens and devices. And the end result is every side further entrenched in the belief that their opinion is the right one, that their experience is the noble one, that their view is the unquestioned one. Did you know that it is scientifically proven that if you have ever argued for or against a particular issue or stance or idea, it is almost impossible to change your mind? Yet it is one of the greatest marks of maturity to be open to and able to change your mind when presented with new information. The only way this happens is when we can step inside someone else's shoes, have empathy for someone else, and understand and consider their perspective and their experience. Your experience and your opinions can never negate the experience and opinions of someone else because it's their story, it's their life, it's their experience. And do you honestly think that you could possibly be right 100% of the time? That every single belief you hold is true, just, and right? Consider the conceit and vanity of that way of thinking. And I assure you, I have been guilty of this time and time and time again in my life, crowning my worldview as correct and unabashedly denying any and all alternatives. I mean, the nerve, you guys. I have learned and remain in constant need of reminding that the only way we gain more empathy and understanding is by asking more questions. It is foolish to believe every opinion we hold is true. We are simply working with limited data and experience. I urge you, in these days, be thoughtful about how you first present your thoughts and beliefs to the world. Even as our country is reeling from the attempted insurrection and coup by the seditionist mob at the U.S. Capitol building 2 weeks ago, pause and be thoughtful. And when you do, don't use that time of pause and reflection to stew and fester. Use it to grow as a human being, to mature. Ask more questions. When you feel anger building up within you, when you read a social media post, or when you hear a family member say something that doesn't quite jive with what you believe, your first reaction, of course, is likely going to be one filled with anger. You want to snap back, you want to respond, and you want to do so cuttingly that you make your point known and you change a mind in that split second. That's really hard to do. Take a breath. Count to 10. 10 seconds might feel like a lifetime, but it's really not. It's 10 seconds. And begin asking questions. Why do they feel that way? Why would they respond that way? What could be happening in their life that they would think that, or say that, or do that? What are they afraid of? As much as you don't like what they said or what they believe, seek first to understand who they are and why they believe that way by asking questions. Become an observer rather than an active participant. Withdraw yourself, and you'll save yourself so much headache and heartache. Put a pause button on your immediate response to throw out your side of the argument and collect yourself. Not so you can agree, but so that your argument can be presented as a well-reasoned, collected, and above all else, human response. Of course, there are times when waiting isn't possible. I'm not here for straw man arguments and but whataboutisms. Maturity also involves understanding nuance and context. But you and I could do ourselves a favor and take a breather, examine our emotions, and wait as we present our honest, mature selves when we feel tempted to do just the opposite. Mouth shut, eyes and ears open, mind prepared to receive new and perhaps contrary information, ready to learn and understand. I promise you, it's worth the wait. So I've got another question for you. Would you wait in line for 2 hours to get some barbecue? What if it was the best barbecue in the world? You see, I grew up in a small town situated just outside Kansas City, Kansas. And yes, there is a Kansas City, Kansas, and a Kansas City, Missouri, and yes, the difference matters. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I don't know why you would, but one of the things Kansas City is most famous for is barbecue, ranking just slightly above Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City's history as a jazz mecca. And at the corner of 47th and Mission, in KCK, inside that unassuming gas station, is perhaps the most famous and well-known barbecue joint in all of Kansas City, Joe's. Joe's Kansas City. The list of places to get unbelievable, mouth-watering barbecue in Kansas City is immense, and the recommendations are different depending on what you're in the mood for. Ribs, burnt ends, sandwiches, brisket, pulled pork, chicken. But it is at Joe's Kansas City, where many have deemed to be the best barbecue in the world. No, seriously, Joe's Kansas City Barbecue has won every barbecue award there is and has been named the best barbecue in the world by numerous outlets, including Men's Health magazine. The late Anthony Bourdain included Joe's Kansas City as one of his 13 places to eat before you die. And if you're from Memphis or the Carolinas or Texas, look, I appreciate your barbecue, but it ain't Kansas City barbecue. Now, I surely ruffled some feathers just now. Us barbecue folks are fanatical about our Q. But something Anthony Bourdain also said comes to mind. I don't have to agree with you to like you or respect you. And dang it, I respect the heck out of anyone who enjoys real barbecue. Like the kind that you get in a gas station in Kansas City, Kansas. My favorite at Joe's? The burnt ends, which are a creation of Kansas City-style barbecue. And if you're not in line at Joe's at 11 a.m., you're likely out of luck, because when they're gone, they're gone. But once you get to the front of that line and you shout your order through the little opening to the line workers, your mouth has been watering for so long you can already taste the deliciousness. And when you finally have your order on your tray and you find a table, you sit down, you take your first bite, and you say, this was so worth the wait. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of The Follow-Up Question. Please do me a huge favor. Share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to today's episode. Share with your network. Help spread the good word about the importance of waiting and asking more questions. If you like the conversations with amazing guests that I have each week, save for these solo episodes, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Subscribing helps the show gain more reach. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me, michael@thefollowupquestion.com, or go to thefollowupquestion.com and reach out there. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question. And until then, keep asking questions.